The Israeli government, and in particular its prime minister, are facing growing criticism over their handling of the aftermath of Hamas's terrorist attacks. Israeli media are reporting that Benjamin Netanyahu is at odds with his war cabinet and military generals. In the past weeks, we've seen the prime minister visiting troops across Israel, especially the forces massing on the Israeli-Gaza border ahead of an expected ground invasion. But sources cited by Israeli media claim that there is growing displeasure at his refusal to engage with military leaders. Now, Netanyahu has so far refrained from admitting that he made any mistakes before, during, and after the attacks by Hamas. Tonight, we saw the first public show of self-reflection. Netanyahu saying that everyone will have to explain themselves, including himself.
Citizens of Israel, October the 7th was a black day in our history. We will get to the bottom of what happened on the southern border around Gaza. This debacle will be investigated. Everyone will have to give answers, including me.
And for more now, I want to bring in DW's Mideast analyst, Shani Rozanes. So the very self-aware Benjamin Netanyahu tonight, we know that the prime minister, he's come under criticism. Did he deliver the message that the Israeli people may have been expecting?
Well, 220 families of hostages were expecting to hear something about the hostages. That did not happen. But he did bring himself to as close as I think we will ever get from him to hear, I am responsible, I apologize, I take responsibility for what happened. He said it's clear to him this has been a great failure and there's going to be a lot of hard questions to be asked, and he will be amongst those to be answering them. So that's close enough for many Israelis. We need to keep in mind, it's been 19 days, Netanyahu has not held a single press conference. He's not facing the journalists, he's not facing the press, so he's not really answering the hard questions yet. So far he has support, but he understands that he cannot last for too long.
You know, military leaders in Israel quickly acknowledged their failure to protect Israelis after October 7th. I mean, has there been any admission of political responsibility for the security failures on October 7th?
Well, if you want to focus on the security failures, that's very easy for the politicians, you know, to put this as a failure of intelligence, the army. That's a very safe spot for politicians. But there is, of course, the need within Israeli public to look at the broader picture. What role did politicians have in their deeds, in securing or not securing, in striving or not striving towards a political solution to the Palestinian problem, towards, negotiating backdoor deals through Qatar with Hamas. This is something done by the political, level and not only by the military. So in that aspect, we have not seen enough of the political backbone of Israel stepping up and saying, we also have a stake in this failure. The consensus now is let's first fight and then deal with everything else. But it's also, as we're learning that this fight will take very long, there's also an understanding that maybe harder questions still need to pop up beforehand.
And we've seen a former chief of staff of the Israel Defense Forces saying that Netanyahu should resign now. Others saying that the government is dysfunctional. I mean, it's not a pretty picture. I mean, what do we know about the views of active military leaders in Israel? Well,
active military leaders are silent. We know about some rifts regarding operational issues. For example, the ground invasion. Is it coming? When is it coming? Should we have more humanitarian aid coming in or less? But when it comes to Netanyahu's political future, we don't hear anything of that sort. We do hear among politicians, even from Netanyahu's party, more and more voices saying it is clear that he will not be able to stay much longer in his position once the fighting is gone. It's still yet to be seen if they will live up to that or where will it lead him. We've seen Netanyahu is masterful in finding his way out, even from the most dire crises.
Do you think he'll survive this war?
I think the chances are very slim, but I also think that we all know too good in order to be too quick to say that he will not be able to survive.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I mean, he's been written off too many times before.
Let me ask you about Benny Gantz. He is a member of this emergency unity government.
Yes.
He is a man with a lot of military experience.
Correct.
Is he crucial to this war having a successful end?
He is crucial. I mean, the right-wing parts of Netanyahu's government, they say, well, he's part of the conception that failed. But then he is quite crucial, because this is where we zoom out and we look at the Americans. You know, Blinken did not make it to Israel before the unity government was announced. Netanyahu had, enlarging the government has helped him gain the credibility from the people, but also from a big ally like the U.S. We know that when Blinken was around and he was sitting with the cabinet, the unity ministers, it was important for him to include them in the picture. We know that their presence as the more moderate, balancing act in Netanyahu's government is very, very important in that aspect of getting control, getting support for Netanyahu's actions.
How much of these problems would you say go back pre-October 7th? And I'm thinking about Netanyahu pushing for these judicial reforms. A lot of people, critics, even the Biden administration, saying he's attacking the checks and balances system of government.
Well, there are voices within Israel still in the margins saying that the enemy, that Hamas, saw the fragility of the Israeli society and thought it can take advantage of it. And we've seen it was quite successful. There are these voices so far still in the margins, but and we've seen an unbelievable unity among, from all ranks, from ultra-Orthodox and Arab Israelis, everybody joining in these crucial moments in this terrible, facing this attack. But we also know this will not last for too long. Divisions are already starting to come, to the surface when it comes to the hostages, when it comes to humanitarian crisis, when it comes to policy. And then, the hawks will remain hawks, the doves will stay doves, and Netanyahu is a hawk, and he's surrounded by hawks.
Shani, Rozanes, as always, we appreciate you coming in. We appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to pull in journalist Sami Sockol now. He is in Jerusalem. Sami, let's go through this. The Prime Minister is saying that the IDF is preparing for a ground incursion. We've heard from French President Macron. He has called that, and I'm quoting here, an error. We've also got media reports that Israel actually agreed to delay its offensive. I mean, can you give us some clarity here on what the message is?
Yeah, well, definitely Netanyahu is preparing the Israeli public for a long campaign in the Gaza Strip. He's preparing the public. This is considered to be like a very important speech, and this is how it's received in Israel. Now, as to the timing, clearly it's not going to happen tonight. We've read, let's say, in the Wall Street Journal that Americans have been asking Israel to postpone this kind of ground incursion, especially because they want to deploy air defense systems throughout the Middle East to protect American sites in places such as Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Syria, and so forth. So the Americans are now preparing for what they think would be strikes against them by different factions in the Middle East. So therefore, we're seeing this kind of like postponing.
Sami, the Prime Minister also spoke about security lapses that were exposed in the October 7th attacks. I mean, did he take any responsibility for this? And maybe if you could just remind us of what those lapses are.
Yeah, well, we did not hear from him the taking of responsibility, the kind of statements that we heard from people from the military echelon. And this was much awaited. I think many in the Israeli public, they regard Netanyahu as being responsible for at least some of the failure. And we didn't hear that. Nevertheless, he said that after the war, he will answer questions as to what has happened. And of course, we're talking about a failure first on the behalf of the intelligence, that they did not realize that Hamas has been preparing for many months, maybe a whole year, such a large-scale operation. And Israel that has been boasting of having such a sophisticated intelligence, knowing where everything and what is happening, it totally failed on this. On top of that, we had operational failure of the troops, and especially we're talking about the towers that were taken down by Hamas drones. So there was no proper surveillance. And of course, the wall that Israel built through along the Gaza Strip that failed to stop the hundreds of Hamas people.
And The airstrikes that are hitting the Gaza Strip, they intensified today, right?
Indeed, we're talking about a pounding of the Gaza Strip. This is what Israel said it would do, and it will continue. Some are saying that this is why they're not going yet for a ground incursion. They still want to bombard the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, we're seeing casualties, civilian casualties. There's a very known journalist from Al Jazeera, Wael Dahdouh, his wife, daughter, and son were all killed in one of these bombardments, and this is going to continue.
Journalist Sami Sockol with the latest tonight from Jerusalem. Sami, thank you.